Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Williams, and welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the Shaver mystery. We're going to be talking about the inner Earth and such weird things. Did what happened when? Tonight, we're going to be looking at the Shaver mystery. We're going to be talking about the inner Earth. I was making sure I was streaming on YouTube. As I was saying, we're going to be looking at the Shaver mystery. We're going to look at the mystery and all of this stuff about it, all of the stuff that led to UFOs and people saying that such creatures as well, that there are creatures in old civilizations of aliens living in the center of the earth. But first, while we wait for people to gather in the chat, let me go off and show off some artwork from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs. This, as you've seen before, well, this is my extreme 90s cover. This cover I did to harken back, as I've said, to the comic books of the 90s. It looks pretty good, huh? The name of my graphic novel is Scumdogs. It's a parody comic book. I parody the cartoons from the 80s. So you're going to enjoy this book. It's going to remind you of what it was like to be a kid watching Saturday morning cartoons. Now, the title characters, the Scumdogs, they're supervillains that take over the universe. They're basically a parody of the Decepticons from Transformers or Cobra from G.I. Joe. You get the idea. They're led by Deathmug, the purple guy with the metal mask over here. He's basically a parody of various villains from 80s cartoons. You can see in the way he looks and the way I made him. Like Skeletor, he's got a skull face. You know, Skeletor from He-Man, he's got a skull face like him. And like the villains of G.I. Joe, the leaders of Cobra, like Cobra Commander, he's got a metal mask. And like Serpentor, he's got gold on him. And he's purple, like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You can see him fighting his arch. Now, you can see him fighting his arch enemy over there. Now, Deathmug is an arrogant dictator who wants to rule the world. His arch enemy, Buick Starpoon, the guy with the pink pompadour hair over there, he's basically a G.I. Joe parody, mostly of Duke from G.I. Joe. But if you notice his green and white uniform, how it looks like something from Star Trek, he's also a parody of such characters from space operas. You know, those gallant heroes who fight villains and stuff like that. But he's a parody of them. He's a parody of them because, well, he's an arrogant military type of fellow. Well, he's one of those military type characters who never admits they're wrong, keeps blundering and doing the wrong thing and making a disaster. You know, those types of guys who basically make everything worse. That's Buick Starpoon. Now, because him and his team are all G.I. Joe parodies and stuff like that, like say, as well as space opera heroes as well, like from Star Trek or Star Wars. They each have a military, but mostly they're a parody of G.I. Joes. That means they each have a military specialty, something in the military that makes them great for fighting terrorists, or basically a special skill that the military values in them, or something that they can do really well. So they're all either very highly skilled soldiers, or basically maybe they're great pilots, or maybe they are great at gathering intel for information for their operations. You get the idea. Now, the other members of Buick Starpoon's team you can see in this cover as well. This guy over here with the mohawk, and right here, his name is, this guy over here, his name is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he's an army guy. Before he joined up with Buick Starpoon and to fight the Scumdogs, he was part of the army. Then you have this bald guy. Yeah. You have this bald guy with a gun over here in the blue uniform. His name is Beach Pounder. His military specialty is that he's a Marine, just another Marine. Then you have this guy back here. Yeah, then you have this guy back here in the red uniform in that vehicle firing off his missiles at the Scumdogs. His name is Blast Tank. His military specialty is that he's a heavy vehicle specialist, a tanker. Now, if you realized it, he actually has, he's a tanker. While the other guys are, they each have they each have a military specialty too. But they're if you get the joke, how if you compare Blast Tank to them, he's a tanker and stuff. All right, this cover is one of 3 different variant covers you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. I continue working on my book every day, folks, and when it's up, it'll be on Indiegogo, so go back it. All right, Now we'll look at Girl Friday. Girl Friday is another member of the Wild Rangers. That's the name that that was given to Buick Starpoon's team in the Space Forces. You know how G.I. Joe's called G.I. Joe? They're called the Wild Rangers. Now, Girl Friday was assigned to be Buick Starpoon's second in command because while the Wild Rangers fight the scum dogs and save the universe every day, they're also complete idiots whose idea of saving something is basically setting it on fire. You get the idea. Now, she hates him. She hates her job because she feels like she's basically, or her career in the military is basically over. But she's also a parody on the Girl Friday archetype kind of character. You know, those female characters that are in love that are in love with their superior officer. She is basically a parody of that. But she's not in love with Buick Starpoon. She pretty much hates his guts, and you get it, huh? All right. All right. Let's move on. Over here we have Death Mug's henchmen, because you know in all 80s cartoons, the main villain of a cartoon would have henchmen, and they'd be total morons. The pink guy down here is Sloppy, and the blue guy up here with the top hat is Mermouth. These guys are a parody of every henchman from an 80s cartoon. If you like your henchmen who are dumb and have super powerful, then these guys are up your alley. Here we have Hair Metal Doctor. Hair Metal Doctor is a parody of Dr. Mindbender from G.I. Joe, who was a mad scientist. But my mad scientist is a hair metal musician, so he's Hair Metal Doctor. He thinks of all the machines the scumdogs use to try and take over the universe. He does it while rocking out. He's Hair Metal Doctor. And here we have Miss Breasty Melons. Miss Breasty Melons is a parody of the Baroness from G.I. Joe. But unlike the Baroness, she's, a party girl who wants to have fun. See, the Baroness is one of those sexy femme fatale characters. Now, but unlike her, Miss Breasty Melons, while she is sexy, she's more of a dumb blonde kind of character, and she only became a villain. She only joined up with the Scumdogs to be a villain for fun. You get the idea. Now, the Hair Metal Doctor pinup and the Miss Breasty Melons pinup will be included with other pinups in my graphic novel when you back it. But I will also get these pinups out to you on t-shirts, so you can buy those as well. You can get it. I'm going to make t-shirts with these designs on them, so you should enjoy them. All right. Showed you off my artwork, and I think I'll move on. Let's go look at Indiegogo real quick and have some more fun. I just recently backed Chronicles of Calamity 2 on Indiegogo because I think I already have issue 1. So I'm going to enjoy that. So let me do this. All right. Alien Alamo is made 114,806. It's still funny in demand. Let's take a look. Oh, by the way, folks, hit that like button for me. It really helps me fight the algorithm. Hitting that like button means more people see my content, okay? And that means my graphic novel Scumdogs will come out all the sooner. As well as, please remember, go to my YouTube page, Read Comics They're Bad For You, and go to past live streams. It'll take you directly to this video when I'm done filming if you want to watch it again. Because YouTube buries my videos, and if you want to watch it again, just go to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You, and go to past live streams. Also, please hit that notification bell and hit the part of the notification bell that will give you all future notifications. And please share this video out on Twitter and Facebook. Now let's get back into this. Alien Alamo. Let's see. Story. It's 1957. The Russians have just launched a satellite into orbit. The world was no longer the same. War veteran Travis Houston was not all that happy. All Travis wanted when he mustered out of the Marine Corps at the end of the war was some peace and quiet and a safe place to raise his son. James, with the horrors he experienced in the Pacific and the death of his wife, have left him empty and distant. The meteor shower changed all that. Only it wasn't a meteor shower, it was an invasion. Creatures from another world want ours, and the only thing staying between them and us is a man and a boy. Will the Houstons be able to get through this? Will the Houstons be able to get through this? Well, they're Texans, and I think they will. You can back this book for $25. Yeah, you have 3 different covers you can back, and each of them looks great. The artwork in this book looks pretty good as well. But you can also back for the Chenoo and Alien Alamo together for $50. I'm probably going to get that because I want both books. Looks pretty good. Go back Alien Alamo. It's up on Indiegogo. Let's see, other stuff to look at. Inglorious Rex has got 27 days left. It's made $198,015. It looks pretty good. You go back that as well. You can also back this book for $25 for your copy. There's Fragga Boom's Black Flag Pineapple. Yeah, Black Flag Pineapple looks pretty like another good book. It's made $218,908 and it's still funding in demand. So go get that book as well. Then there's Ethan Van Sciver's Magnetic Starfolio. Get this as well. It's also made $195,845, and it looks great as well. We got a few more books to look through. Let's go look over here. Magic Top 2 White Lines from Zad Comics has made $29,578. That's good. Then you have Only Death Can Save Us, Techstone. So that's also good. Let's go over here. I want to look for a few more Indiegogos. Knife Hand Blind Spot. This is a new book from Richard Mayer. Yeah. You know Richard Mayer, Our Boy Zach. This is the new Jawbreakers book, and it's a solo book starring Knife Hand. You can back this book for $25, but you can also back for a few other perks as well. You can get, this book plus Ninja's 2-pack. Get Rock and Roll Ninja for $50, or you can get the Jawbreakers 4-pack for $100. Get all of the Jawbreakers books together. Now, the story. Knife Hand is a mutant ninja with the ability to generate energy blades from his hands that cut through anything. As a boy, he was kidnapped and held for ransom. But his wealthy father refused to pay the kidnappers, so they sold him to a ninja clan. After years of brutal training, he got the power of the Knife Hand and went AWOL, searching for his father to get revenge, but the ninja clan never stopped hunting for him, so he joined the Jawbreakers in order to use them as a gang to protect him. His disdain for his teammates is unknown to them, but as much as he hates them, he needs them, so when the rest of the team is kidnapped, it's up to Knife Hand to rescue them. It looks like a great-looking book, I have to say. Knife Hand, look at that artwork. It does look like something that you'd see from, Metal Gear Solid. The artist of this book looks great. Story by Richard Meyer, Ironside's Pandemic. Art, Kenneth Lowe, G.I. Joe. All right. This is a 60-plus page. Well, the book is 60-plus pages because the Knife Hand story itself is, is going to be 24 pages. All right. The content, Knife Hand, 22 page. Okay, it's a 22-page main story, and there's a Garrison, a backup story with basically a parody of G.I. Joe, where you see a bunch of characters in this story that are very much like G.I. Joe characters, and they have to team up with basically their version of Cobra to rescue their teammates from another terrorist organization. Because the Cobra guys and the G.I. Joe guys are the G.I. Joe stand-ins, lose teammates to this other terrorist organization and that to team up to save them. It looks good. Yeah, and look at that artwork for Knife Hand. Oh, that's a great-looking book. Here's Garrison. Well, rather, I should say here's artwork from where the inspiration for this book comes from various places. Here's artwork for Metal Gear Solid. Looks good as well. Here's artwork for Garrison, and it looks great. The black and white artwork looks good. And the drawings they did, basically the pre-drawings, the SketchUp artwork, the sketches for this book also look good. And look at them. Great. This is a great looking book. That's Knife Hand. Jawbreakers Knife Hand. Go back and you can get it for $25. This campaign has made $80,240 and it's still funding in demand. Knife Hand looks like a great looking book. All right, let's go over here. We're doing pretty well. I guess we could look at some more stuff. Earthbound Part 2 has made 72,624. You can also back this book for $25. Go back it. Now, let's go look at the Shaver Mysteries, huh? Let's see. Shaver Mysteries. There's a guy who made it, said that he basically started hearing stuff. This is basically the guy who basically came up with this story said that he started hearing things through his welding tool. He started hearing the thoughts of people, and he also started hearing things about these creatures living below ground, these detrimental robots, and this robotic race of two robotic races. They used to be known as before they used to be one race before they basically split apart. You have the noble Terros and the evil Duros, who are below ground, who are fighting each other, and the Duros plan to try and or at least make humans miserable above ground. So you get the idea. The Shaver Mystery, UFOs, the Hollow Earth, and the Birth of Science Fiction subgenre. The Strange Saga of Richard Shaver. I think I'll start with this one. Give an idea here, huh? Let's see. A couple of nights ago, I did a radio interview, which I was asked about my views on the notorious but immediately fascinating, intriguing saga of Richard Shaver. Well, for those of you who may not be acquainted with it, here's the story. The editor of the now acclaimed and now legendary Amazing Stories, MAG, from 1938 to 1949, Ray Palmer, who was born in 1910, had a hell of a hard time as a kid. At the age of only 7, he was involved in a violent accident that shattered his spine, something that directly and significantly stunted his growth and provoked endless health-related issues throughout his entire life. None of us, unless we have personally undergone such a traumatic event, can even begin to imagine how we might react in the aftermath of such a situation in the formative years of our childhood. Maybe we would do precisely what the young Ray Palmer did. He became somewhat reclusive, a result of cruel taunts from local kids and ignorant adults, and from the solitary atmosphere of his bedroom. Palmer buried his head deeply within the imaginative pages of the science fiction themed magazines of 1920s and 1930s. And the real world was just too much for the deformed and damaged Palmer to deal with. The realm of the futuristic fantasy world will have to take its place, and most certainly did. In the final year of his teens, Palmer started co-editing his very own fanzine titled The Comet, which was enthusiastically and eagerly welcomed by the burgeoning science fiction community of the day. But the biggest event, the biggest in Palmer's life, came in 1938. In fact, it was a veritable dream come true. Okay. Ziff Davis, publisher of Amazing Stories magazine, had just moved its base of operations from the Big Apple to the Windy City, and in the process dumped its editor, one T. O'Connor Sloan. Palmer didn't live too far away in the heart of Milwaukee, and Ziff Davis knew of his comic publication, and offer was made to Palmer that he could not, and most certainly did not, refuse a full-time gig as the editor of Amazing Stories. Oh, yeah, that's great. That is great. Today's Palmer's position as head honcho of Amazing Stories is remembered chiefly for two specific reasons. A, he brought and published Isaac Asimov's very first professional science fiction story, was titled Marooned Off Vista, and B, he became the leading light in a decidedly odd affair that became known as the Shaver Mystery. But whether the Shaver Saga was science fiction or science fact is a matter that still has people guessing and musing to this present day. The Shaver Mystery had its origins at the height of the Second World War. It was a relatively normal day in 1943 when Palmer was opening the daily delivery of mail that regularly poured into the office of Amazing Stories, and came across one particular missive penned by a certain Richard Shaver. And Weird barely began to describe it, and Shaver wrote that he personally had uncovered a sensational and terrifying secret in our distant past. Race of ancient, highly evolved entities lived right under our very feet. Massive caverns, huge caves, and near endless tunnels were the dark, damp places they called home. At least that is before they decided to exit the Earth and headed away to a whole new light years away. Yeah. they exit the Earth and headed away to a whole new light years away world on the other side of the galaxy. But when these particular entities said their final goodbyes, well, on Earth, the planet they left behind them, something truly sinister and abominable. They left behind them something truly sinister and abominable. Their diseased offspring, which were said to be called the Duros. And, well, Duros, it's called that. Well, they also left behind the Daros, who were also supposed as well, but they're supposed to be good. Let's see. Get back to this. And mentally deranged, sick puppies, they were, well, the Duros. As well as the Taros, but you get the idea. Let's get back to this. And mentally deranged, sick. Let me get this first over here. Get this. All right. Let's get back to this. And mentally deranged, sick puppies they were, taunting the human race, finding more and more ways to screw up our lives and plague our minds, and even worse, using us as food. Were just some of their bad habits. Yes, according to Shaver, human beings were being systematically kidnapped and equally systematically devoured by cave-dwelling monsters. If you were one of the poor souls that's destined to end up on a Duro's dinner plate, it can't have been much fun. But for Palmer, this is exactly what it was. Not only was Palmer the editor of Amazing Stories, but he was highly astute editor too. He quickly grasped the significance and potential enormity of the story that had fallen into his lap. He knew it was one that would likely highly entertain the readers of the magazine to an infinite degree, and he realized Shaver's branding probably wouldn't hurt sales figures of the magazine either. History has proven Palmer, well, correct. Yep, on each and every one of those three accounts. Here's more artwork and stuff like that. This is beautiful artwork, isn't it? Look at this stuff. Amazing Stories was a beautiful looking book. Well, the artwork they certainly got for these covers was beautiful. So what do you think? It sounds interesting, huh? Very cool as well to talk about. So do you think Richard Shaver was telling the truth, or Ray Palmer, well, later basically certainly found his story interesting? Well, certainly found his story to be make him some money, or rather he found his story to be highly entertaining. Certainly, let's get back to this article. Before he could proceed any further, Palmer realized that he needed much more from Shaver. Important questions need answering. Had Shaver been to this terrifying underworld? Might he even have personally encountered the deadly psychotic Taros? If not, then from where was Shaver getting his information? This is where things get even more warped. Shaver eagerly wrote back to Palmer with the answers, although one is strongly inclined to suspect the answers that come from Palmer's were not the ones he was expecting. Shaver wrote that in 1932 he was employed as a welder in a car factory. Most days were routine. Yeah, we talked about this a little earlier. One most certainly was not. On the occasion in question, wrote a deadpanning Shaver his wielding gun before began talking to him. No, that's not a typo. It did so, said Shaver, in classic scientific gobbledygook tones by some freak of its coil field attunements. Of course, what else? Telepathically delivered tales of horrific nature were beamed into what amounted to Shaver's mind, all relative to the Duros, their penchant for human meat, and their underground cities. In fact, so pleased with Shaver by Palmer's quick reply to his original missive that he penned a 10,000-word plus brainstorming story that detailed the salient points of the affair, including the outrageous claim that he, Shaver, had been the captive of the Duros for a number of years prior to making good his escape and before ending up in the inevitable cooking pot. There's more artwork. Look at that, huh? This was absolutely great, thought Palmer, who duly burned the midnight oil, tidying up and editing Shaver's story, which finally appeared in Amazing Stories in March 1945 in a feature titled I Remember Lemuria. Never mind through the roof. Sales of the particular issue went through the stratosphere, and both Palmer and the publisher were delighted. Neither, however, was quite prepared for the thousands of letters that poured into the office of Amazing Stories from a multitude of readers who had become fascinated by the tales of Richard Shaver. There was that as well as a lot of people saying they actually met and been kidnapped by the Duros and escaped from them, and escaped from them. That's also what you hear as well. At least that's what a lot of people say some of those letters were. All right. Let's get back to this. We want more. Those were the words coming from the huge readership, and Palmer did not disappoint in the slightest. The Shaver controversy continued for decades, constantly being added to by other characters who claimed knowledge of the Duros and their evil underworld. Today, the entire issue is viewed by the majority of UFO researchers as nothing more than a practical joke, one initiated by Shaver, for who the term, nutty as a fruitcake, might very well have been invented and then expanded upon by Palmer, ever ready to increase the audience size of his cherished magazine, no matter how tall the tale was. That said, however, Shaver still has a huge following today. Well, after all, who knows what really sort of monstrous entities might be lurking? Well, yeah, might really be lurking down there. Who knows? Get down there and stuff. Oh, so you get an idea what this is. We'll be looking at more. Now you know what who Richard Shaver is. You got an idea what this is. I mean, of all things, and this is the funny thing, Robert Heinlein, I think that's his name, the writer of Starship Troopers, thought Richard Shaver was a charlatan, and basically wrote to the magazine saying he should be disbarred or something, or thought he was just basically lying and stuff. Ugh, wow, amazing. Robert Heinlein, of all people. I wonder what this is, huh? Is it real or not? It's very interesting. But I'm just telling you that that other famous people, other writers got involved in this as well as people saying, and this is odd, a bunch of readers basically wrote Amazing Stories at one point saying that they should not be saying that the Shaver mystery is real, that there is such a thing as the Duros and Taros who live down below our feet. A bunch of people wrote in saying they should stop it. The magazine actually did. Is that actually true, I wonder? I mean, I guess a bunch of people, science fiction fans, could have done that. But it sounds, I don't know, could we really believe that? I mean, if these creatures actually existed, maybe the government is, because people say the government's actually in cahoots with the Taros, at least on some level. Not the Taros, the Duros on some level. Basically providing them with people to eat and stuff. As well as them giving us their technology, of course, because we need as much advanced technology as possible, apparently, because we work with monsters. So, was it actually actual science fiction fans writing into Amazing Stories to basically stop the Shaver mystery and basically no longer make it? Or was it the government making those letters and basically sending them in? Or did the government pressure Amazing Stories? Don't worry too much. I mean, Richard Shaver continued writing these stories up to his death in 1975, even though he had to make his own publication to do so. So don't worry, it continued, and he made even more stories. But you get the idea. The Shaver mystery, UFOs, the Hollow Earth, and birth of science fiction subgenre. Let's take basically about Hollow Earth and stuff like that. Let's take a look at it, huh? See more about this. It was 1945, and science fiction writer Ray Palmer was working as the editor of a popular pulp magazine called Amazing Stories. A diminutive fellow with a hunchback, Palmer had suffered a near-crippling accident early in life that broke his spine, and the resulting unsuccessful surgery stunted his growth, and thus at the age of 35, Palmer had grown to a mere 4 feet in height. It was on an afternoon during the year in question that Palmer happened upon an old letter in the office of Schloss-Pile. The letter was from a man who claimed he had managed to decipher a secret-coded ancient language. of which evidence could still be discerned from modern writing. Ah, that has also been talked about as well. So, what do you think about that, huh, folks? There's very weird stuff. This weird thing that this Richard Shaver came with. I mean, he came up with this stuff, and some people say that's more well. People really can't explain how he came up with this as well, at least from what I understand. Let's get back to this. When he came up with this weird language and stuff, well, with this weird stuff and stuff. Let's see. Let me just get back to this article. Who claimed he had managed to discover Rain Palmer wrote back, from Rain. Palmer wrote back to the author of Mr. Richard Sharp Shaver of Pennsylvania, seeking clarification on the unusual matter. This prompted a long, rambling letter from Shaver, who claimed to learn of this and other mysteries of our world. After, psychically overhearing the communications of psychically overhearing the communications of beings living in extensive caverns below ground. Yeah, and he came back with this weird language and stuff like that, apparently. And a lot of people say it's actually true. There's something to it and stuff. So, how did this guy come up with it? Well, maybe he found it or something. Shaver was no great writer himself. If this Golan's offering was any indication, though, Palmer saw potential. Nevertheless, from it, he began to construct an outline based on Shaver's missive and shaped it into a decent fantasy story, which eventually saw publication in the title I Remember Lemuria. Thus, the Shaver mystery was born. Initially intended to be read and enjoyed only as fiction, Shaver's weird ramblings would inspire Palmer and the publishers of Amazing Stories to continue publication of the Shaver mystery stories for several years, during which the readership of the magazine reportedly increased by thousands throughout the period, which saw the publication of stories based on his old rambling mythos. Shaver had always maintained that his communications with inner Earth dwellers were real and that the stories of cavern systems inhabited by strange beings beneath the earth were based on fact. And as I've said before about this, it could be that they picked Richard Shaver, the aliens as well as the government. That basically, as I said, some things about disclosure is basically getting these ideas out there and getting people used to the idea of aliens and creatures from below the earth, getting used to the idea of it. Well, mainly because there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop them. I mean, we can go to war against these guys, but they have more advanced technology. And, if this was caused by the government as well as creatures living below the earth who are in cahoots with them and they wanted people to know about us so that one day they would come out in the public to be known by us, so they'd be publicly known. It could very well be this was all talk and stuff like that, and the Duros and Terrors don't actually exist like this, as well as if you go look at aliens and extraterrestrials, this is all just talk. We only know secondhand knowledge from other people who basically have experienced this. And basically anything they saw could, as I've said, basically be that they were only supposed to see this stuff and only get a glimpse of the aliens as well as other creatures. Basically, all of this is basically so the government and the aliens and creatures out there can get used to the idea that we live on a planet with a bunch of other species and stuff, as well as creatures out in outer space or or from other realities and stuff. So we are used to it, and we won't go completely out of our minds knowing about it and stuff. It could be that they pricked Richard Shaver to get this idea out there, and that the Duros and Terros, the actual creatures that live inside the Earth might be quite different, might actually be aliens, and they only want us to know about this stuff because they're trying to get us used to it. So we don't go completely insane, as I said. As I said, there might be an entirely different species. But then again, there are supposed to be several different species out there as well, not just the Terros and Duros. Basically, creatures that look like fairies or something like that, or breakaway civilizations of humans and stuff. You get the idea. Let's get back to this article. Following the publication of the novella I Remember Lemuria, Palmer professed that letters his publication received, usually numbering less than 50 or so each month, were now close to 50,000. Equally impressive had been that many of these fan letters detailed strange experiences spying on the exploits of these deep earth denizens Shaver claimed to have met. Among the letters Palmer received had been the story of a woman who claiming to have served as a medical specialist in France during the Second World War, entered the sub-basement of an old building via an elevator. A cavernous opening existed in the lowest portion of the building. And upon her discovery of the entrance to an underground realm, the woman was captured by a group of monstrous creatures. She claimed to have been held prisoner by these beings for an indefinite period, after which she was finally discovered and released by a group of benign, human-like saviors. An apparent nod toward the story was later featured in the works of science fiction writer Harlan Ellison. Harline Ellison, not the other name. This is the guy who wrote Starship Troopers and stuff like that, as well as you get the idea. Who I talked about him earlier, Harline Ellison, who wrote in a short story titled, I got Harline Ellison's name wrong. This is actually the guy who wrote and had a problem with Richard Shaver saying he was lying about his experiences. Harline Ellison, the writer of Starship Troopers, as well as other science fiction stories, stuff like that. You get the idea. Such stories as I'm trying to think of a few other stories, not just Starship Troopers. It doesn't really matter and stuff. Trying to think here. He also wrote A Stranger in Paradise. I'm pretty sure he wrote that, A Stranger in Paradise. So let's get back to this. Harlan Ellison wrote in a short story titled The Elevator People that there are 500 buildings in the United States whose elevators go deeper than the basement. Ellison, however, was a vocal critic of the Shaver mystery stories and had at one time badgered Palmer about his assistance in publishing them. Much like the story above outlined, Shaver characterized these subterranean inhabitants into two different groups: a monstrous evil group called the Duros, meaning detrimental robots, and their good-natured counterparts, the Terros, who were nearly identical to humans in appearance. Palmer himself had begun to wonder about the circumstances surrounding all of this insanity, and Shaver's claims that the events related to his letters to Amazing Stories were true. His curiosity finally prompted him to visit Richard Shaver's home in Pennsylvania. After a late evening coffee session, Palmer was led upstairs and shown to the spare bedroom where, throughout the evening, he claimed to his astonishment to hear 5 individual voices of men, women, and children, and even an old gruff man. According to Palmer, he was terrified to hear a discussion that pertained to the dismemberment of a human woman, someplace 4 miles away and presumably 4 miles down. Discussing the experience with Shaver the following morning, the strange host claimed he had asked the beings to go easy on him. Palmer finally growing in his conviction regarding the Shaver mystery himself, was able to get a night's sleep uninterrupted. This is the first time I've heard about this. I was wondering why Ray Palmer basically started believing in the Shaver mystery. It could be that, Richard Shaver conned this guy. Could very well be, but where did he find all these people? He must have had a few friends who were willing to do this. Could very well be that as well, huh, folks? Let's get back to this article. This would be only one of many strange stories Palmer would recount, and through Richard Shaver's own sanity would later come into question. On many occasions, the prolific interest in his visions of an inner earth struggle would continue, inspiring a generation of devotees, researchers that included Timothy Green Beckley, who had known Palmer personally, of his own discovery of Richard Shaver's visions of conflict in a subterranean world he admits being chilled to the bone by the stories of a young reader, saying it was stuff that nightmares were made of, and I was intrigued just as Ray Palmer had been. Okay. That's all very interesting, huh? More people get involved in this. Harlan Ellison, other people as well. Got to understand is if the government did pick Richard Shaver to basically get the ideas of his ideas out there, or whether they implanted ideas into his mind to basically get these ideas out there, so that people would know about these strange things to get them used to it. Could very well be as well as this, as I keep. It could be. I keep saying that it could be real, but then again, it could be that he was just insane. But how do we explain Ray Palmer and what he experienced when he did that? Is it somehow a hoax? Did Richard Shaver con him, or did Ray Palmer actually hear these things? Let's get back to this. Palmer's convictions about Shaver's ideas would come and go over the years. After leaving Amazing Stories, the former editor was still under contractual obligations that prevented him from launching a competing publication. He did, however, do so anyway under a pseudonym, which led to the appearance of Fate, a magazine which at the time was mostly devoted to the burgeoning interest in flying saucers that followed pilot Kenneth Arnold's observation of a group of objects over Mount Rainier in Washington in 1947. Initially, Palmer had been convinced that the appearance of flying saucers might prove to be a vindication of Shaver's claims, supporting that the seemingly advanced aircraft might actually be the subterranean dwellers discussed in his stories. Yeah, because they did. Richard Palmer did say the creatures under the earth had advanced technology and had advanced flying machines. He did say that. All right. Let's get back to this article. As I keep saying, let's get back to this article. With the funding of Fate, Palmer hoped in part to be able to get to the bottom of the saucer mystery, but after a few years, he left the operation, which continued under the publication of his partner, Curtis Fuller. Partner Curtis, huh? Ultimately, what was Palmer to make of his Shaver and his stories? Like many, it seemed by the 1970s that he had become disillusioned with the Shaver and his claims, and even noting in 1971 that during Shaver claimed to have lived underground amidst the warring factions of the Duros and Teros, that he had been in an insane asylum. Yeah. Well, some people, there's no real evidence of it, but does say that he was only admitted to an insane asylum one time, but it looks like he was released under his own cognizance. It doesn't really, and there's real people say that the timeline doesn't really follow rightly with that he might have been in an insane asylum for a very limited amount of time, but apparently for several years no one can really say what he was actually doing. So he wasn't in an insane asylum, and basically no one could tell where he was. That's very odd as well. Instead, here we have that and stuff. The stories, of course, were purely imaginary, supplemented perhaps by the ramblings of a once disturbed mind, but in their heyday, the stories of Richard Shaver were great, and popularity was nearly unraveled. You get the idea there. Let's look at some more of these stories, more stuff here. The shadows within humanity's dark fascination with the hollow earth. The brief history of mind control technology. How the inventor of the Bermuda Triangle anticipated the arrival of flying saucers. There's a bunch of articles basically mentioning, I think we'll mention Richard Shaver. Which one to look at first? The shadows within humanity's dark fascination with the hollow earth. Let's take a look at that first. We'll look at more of this stuff right here. Few of the great fears held by humankind in our path to modernity would rival that long-dead dread of the darkness. Fortunately, with the daily cycle of the Earth rotation, we are only bathed in the blackness for a few hours at a time. Hence, over the long courses of its revolution, humanity has worked mostly by the waking hours, having learned to hide ourselves away as the light proceeds and take our rest during the hours where dangers of the dark become most prevalent. However, if this doesn't have mention Richard Shaver or the inner earth and stuff like that, I might move on to a different article. However, there are places where the darkness may linger indefinitely, despite the grottos, caves that we have served as homes to humans since time immemorial. Well, going too far into the cavernous depths takes us into a world of unseen and one which holds its court by an everlasting darkness. Perhaps it is this continued darkness of the cavernous realms below that helped foster such fascination with the idea of an underworld and of dark subterranean places which never see the daylight we humans live for. In a recent article featured here, Mysterious Universe, I discussed a series of Scottish legends pertaining to cannibals that with little doubt seem to have had an impact on motives, which periodically appear in modern horror films, specifically incorporate humans or subhumans at times existing within caverns who subsist off of cannibalizing others. Namely, this is apparent in Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, and, well, although similar themes appear in later films like Ravenous and The Descent. All right. The idea of cavernous realms beneath us is, of course, a much broader history than that which is modern films allow. Spiritual though the intended tone had been, Dante's Inferno nevertheless features the poet Virgil leading the narrator, well, on a quest into the underworld in which 9 circles of hell are revealed to him. This is no doubt formed from a basis of traditions in which the spiritual notion of hell is oriented below us, in juxtaposition against the heavenly world residing above us, which God and the angelic legions look down upon humanity from a graceful spiritual state. Oh, I said a graceful, spiritual state. Okay. All right, let's get this. The notion of a hollow earth has remained a very important staple of science fiction works ever after, ranging from the reigns of Edgar Rice Burroughs, his 1914 offering at the Earth's core, and more famously Jules Verne's, who addressed the subject of his novel Journey to the Center of the Earth, spawning numerous screen adaptations and similar reworking in various media over the years. Even the American poet and Arthur Edgar Allan Poe, his only novel-length manuscript, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, addressed the hollow earth motive. Throughout the late 1940s, American auto assembly worker Richard Shaver's contribution to the magazine Amazing Stories, inspired in large part by his own delusional fantasies resulting from schizophrenia, so you say, captured the eye of Ray Palmer, who worked on the narrative into a popular series of tales. You know what's odd about Ray Palmer's name? I think it's actually the Atom, the DC superhero, is actually named Ray Palmer too. I think that's a bit strange as well. And he's a guy who turns into has shrinking powers and stuff. That's also very strange, huh? See, he uses these his shrinking powers to go to a subatomic world and see molecules and all that stuff. So yeah, it's odd. And captured the eye of Ray Palmer, who worked the narrative into the popular series of tales referred to as the Shaver Mystery, which told of warring races of ancient beings called the Teros, and on the more wicked side, the Duros, whose battles below ground often brought unsuspecting humans to the fray. Even today, such themes that are found to reappear in stories like Jeff Long's novel, The Descent, which curiously, fine book though it is, seems to have no relation to the 2005 horror film of the same name. 2005 horror film. However, along the way, there have been those of a mind that the Hollow Earth and its riddles were more than merely the stuff of fantasy writing. Earlier legends, which predate the writings of Verne, Burroughs, and even Dante, tell of ancient mythic races which carried out their affairs below ground. A theme which had been a central focus among the occult groups which have become influential amidst the underpinnings of what led to the formation of that party from of that bad guys from World War II. Author and researcher Peter Levender, in his exhaustive study of occult history, Unholy Alliance, tells of these earlier traditions which covered the latter political ideas which formed around these guys. We find ourselves back in familiar ground with the ancient legend of Agartha, the subterranean kingdom of an alien race buried deep within the Himalayas or somewhere in the far north, at any rate. In this appropriately Nordic Frisian race, another of the Thrul years, another of these guys, years before the H.G. Wells described a similar race of beings in his novel The Time Machine. The English author of Roscurian Bulletin, 1802 to 73, was writing of a subterranean master race in a celebrated novel, Veal. All of this is mentioned only to show that these concepts of secret master race and subterranean kingdoms are not peculiar to Germans or even Nordic legend and myth, and certainly not to the bad guys of World War II, but from a part of a global tradition that may have some basis in reality. A thing that is now, deemed by the passage of 2 million millennia to place it clearly and authoritatively into a modern perspective of the Volkskriegs theorists were merely drawing from a bank of myth and tradition familiar the world over, and sculpting from selected pieces of cosmological worldview that placed the German-speaking peoples at the, top of the pyramid of power. Apart from the bad guys of World War II, occult establishment fascination, and such traditions, such beliefs have entertained the minds of many intrepid explorers over the years. There's John Cletus Sims, Jr., who in 1818 made his own declaration that the Earth was hollow in a circular published during the aforementioned year of his old treatise of October 2015. Eric Grunhauser, writing of Atlas Obscura, featured a detailed article in celebration of Underground Week that addressed a number of the modern hollow Earth motives, which includes Simi's hollow Earth aspirations. How much more of this is there to read through as well? I think I can get through this. All right, where was I? Gernhauser explains Sims, a veteran of the World War of 1812 and his unsuccessful trader, soon became maybe the most famous and successful proponent of the hollow Earth theory. His initial vision of the Earth's interior was like a simplified version of Halley's multi-layered model. Well, with the exception that Sims' version included huge holes at the north and south poles, which allowed access to the hidden world inside. These holes, his unique addition to hollow Earth theory, would even come to be known as Sims holes. Remarkably similar notions about the entrances to the Earth's interior via its poles have arisen from more recently than Sims' theories, which date back to the early 19th century, with little doubt. Those which followed had been informed by the previous myths and recurring themes, such as Sims holes would later be worked into the mythos surrounding Admiral Richard E. Byrd, based on such vague statements that Byrd allegedly made, such as I'd like to see that land beyond the North Pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. Here is Richard Byrd. Or I guess maybe this isn't Richard Byrd. R.W. Bernard, PhD, described his own interpretation of Byrd's statements in his book, The Hollow Earth, in which he speculated that Byrd's area beyond the pole had in fact been the hollow interior of the planet. The only way that we can understand Byrd's enigmatical statements is if we discuss the tradition conception of the formation of the Earth and entertain an entirely new one, according to which its Arctic and Antarctic extremes are not convex but concave, and that Byrd entered into the polar concavities when he went beyond the poles. In other words, he did not travel across the poles to the other side, but entered into the polar concavity or depression, which, as we shall see later in this book, opens to the hollow interior of the Earth, the home of a plant, animal, and human life enjoying a tropical climate. This is the great unknown to which Byrd had referenced when he made this statement, and not the ice and snow-bound area on the other side of the North Pole, extending to the upper reaches of Siberia. There have long been conspiracy theories. There have long been conspiracy theories associated with Admiral Byrd and his alleged concerns about Earth's southernmost extremities. These range from claims that Byrd, like many legends before him, had managed to discover a polar entrance to our planet's inner domains, to the admittedly wacky idea of a secret base in Antarctica from which the Reach's secret battalion of flying saucers were being operated. The truth from a purely historical angle is a bit simpler. Byrd has considered the South Pole to be an area of concern following the Second World War. Due to its strategic importance in terms of location, interviews had been given at the time, however, had been grossly misinterpreted to mean that he actually believed there had been a physical danger he encountered there during the failed Operation High Jump. This is basically a bit of, the article basically says that nothing actually happened there. But what happened with Operation High Jump is that Byrd and his squadron were basically sent home crying. Whatever they encountered down there basically kicked their butts. And this article is one of those things where they basically say it wasn't actually that bad, whatever happened. Interviews he had been given around the time, however, that had been grossly misinterpreted to mean that he had actually believed there had been a physical danger he encountered. And misinterpret, huh? A lot of people say they actually did encounter something dangerous down there. Also known as the United States Navy Antarctic Developments program underway between 1946 and 1947. A number of hollow Earth theorists nevertheless maintained that Byrd's discoveries had involved either a post-war, contingency at the South Pole, or perhaps legions of hollow earthers swarming out of a massive Sims hole, or maybe even some bizarre amalgamation of them aforementioned. Proliferation of the idea that the planet is hollow continues even to this day. As recently as 2012, the so-called North Pole Inner Earth Expedition was operating a website which sought to garner funding for literal expedition in search of one of Sim's entrances to Inner Earth. Blogger Sharon Hill of Doubtful News noted around that time that it's okay to entertain the idea of legends. They are romantic and exciting, and they tell us most about the people who recounted them. But when you are dealing with lives and money and huge efforts to be responsible in presenting the justification, listen, if people want to go down there, I have no problem with it, especially if you pay them and they're willing to go. So let them go. To the public is unethical and shady. It's a false advertising, the least potential fraud at worst. If you're willing to go, I have no problem with that. Usually when these things come up, oh, sure, let them go. Let them get themselves killed. That's usually what they say. That's usually what happens. How very strange that we should come across someone saying the opposite. I mean, it is say one way or the other, but it is a bit strange, I find, to find it here. Let's see. Let's get back to this article. Mirroring Sharon's statements, hard not to find the idea of legends pertaining to hollow Earths fascinating, even enjoyable. However, in the modern era of scientific understanding, you mean modern era of scientific understanding in which people basically lie a lot, in which we abide, it is strange to, they lie like the fact that they lie about climate change and stuff like that and saying it's real, and in fact there's no actual real evidence of it, no matter how much they try to lie about it. And let's get back to this article. Which we abide in, it is strange to consider the persistent belief among many that there are literal caverns throughout the inner Earth which might be populated by ancient crypto-terrestrial races or groups second only truth to the renewed interest we've seen among flat Earth proponents. They always try to bring up the inner Earth guys with the flat Earth guys and make them seem silly. You can believe what you will, but a lot of people have seen some very weird things out there. You can't really basically say it's all false, no matter how much you try to bury it. Lately, and the persistent refuse that self-ascribed flat Earth truthers continue to offer even in recent months. What does the flat Earth have to do with the inner Earth, you jerk? As I said, they try to ascribe it to make it seem silly. On a humorous side note, I was recently told by Kyle Frilson, one of the hosts of the Expand Perspective podcast, that he recently sustained a small swarm of cancellations to their podcast subscription service due to a recent remark he had made about the flat Earth theories being absurd, which they are. Blah, blah, blah. So you say, do I believe in it? The flat Earth would basically be too much out there. I try to basically, it's a little much. I can see this. let's go get on with this article. It doesn't mean that I should say one thing or the other, but I just don't really believe the flat Earth thing. For more on this, I do advise checking out my articles here in which I gave a breakdown of the silliness behind these. All right, I'm going to move on because I don't see how this has to have anything to do with the inner Earth. All right, noting to the odd beliefs that are often appended to such things as a hollow Earth isn't to say that much of the inner Earth, well, isn't worthy of future study. Of course, innumerable caverns and caves which exist below the United States, particularly states like Tennessee, are believed to be home to countless undocumented species, mostly ranging from. And here's another thing they do: they basically say how smart they are, bringing up how there are undocumented species and stuff like that under the earth, but never going into how the earth really doesn't seem to basically. How they're trying to say they're so much smarter, saying that all these proven evidence says that they know so much more than everyone else, that there's no such thing as the inner earth, that there are caves down there, but they're only filled with ordinary species that we know about. Mm-hmm. That's what it always comes out when you read these kinds of articles. They always come off with this. Let's finish this. Let's get back to this article. Mostly ranging from crickets and centipedes to various other small amphibians, as well as a host of different microscopic organisms, all of which are somewhat less tantalizing than the alleged lost or hidden races of intelligent beings like the likes of which appear in the various Hollow Earth legends that have accumulated over the years, with the literal existence of cavernous portions of the Earth below us yet to be explored and cataloged, perhaps with the little surprise that we recognize the familiarity this idea of a hollow earth sees even the present day, whether or not it is justified in fact, or fascination with the idea of a world below us, and one that is thus kept within the internal cover of darkness, seems to have been prevailed over the centuries. Well, is basically people still believe in stuff. No matter how much people say no, they still believe in this stuff. Okay, I'm going to thank you all for joining me. This has been a pretty good live stream. I had a lot of fun doing it and a lot of fun making it. Please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read Comics They're Bad for You. Okay, the there in the title is misspelled. It's THERE. So it's Read Comics They're Bad. Yeah, Read Comics They're Bad for You, and make sure you're still subscribed and leave some comments down below, as well as please remember. Go to my YouTube page, Read Comics They're Bad for You, and go to past live streams if you want to watch this video again. It should take you directly to this video as soon as I'm done making. Well, as soon as I'm done making it, go to my YouTube page at Read Comics They're Bad for You, and go to past live streams. Or you can go to my Twitter page at 777megachris1. There will be a link on the first pinned tweet to this video. And as I said, just go to. As I said, that's pretty good, huh? Let me say this again. Go to my YouTube page at Read Comics They're Bad for You and go to past live streams. Also, go to my, hit that notification bell. Make sure to hit the part of the notification bell that will give you all future notifications. And please go share this video out on Twitter and Facebook. Also, please go over and subscribe to Stitch Together Pics. It's another YouTube channel that deserves far more subscribers. He reviews movies, and you're going to love his reviews of movies. As well as go over and subscribe to Robot Co-op. That's another channel that deserves far more subscribers. As well as go over and subscribe to Creepy Little Book as well. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. All right. Remember, I'll be back again tomorrow around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, 8, 9, or 10, 9, 10, or 11 p.m. for another live stream. So be sure to come back again then. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all.